Greetings, I'm Cam Miller, and this is Team 99, a look back at the 1999 Cincinnati Reds on the 25th anniversary of their improbable season. This is Episode 6, The Dog Days. On July 22nd, the Reds were 53-40 and 2.5 games back of the Astros as they headed out west to face the Giants and the Dodgers. Now, the Wild West had been historically a rough stretch for the club over the years, but the pennant-chasing Reds had something to prove. Although they dropped the first game 6-5, they would take 2 of 3 in the series, including a 2-1 win thanks to a Michael Tucker pinch hit home run in the 14th inning. On to LA, and the Reds once again won an extra inning thriller 5-3 to open up the series, a series they would take 3-4. So going into the dog days of August, the team would come home for 6 versus the Giants and Rockies. They won 4 of those games. And after taking 4-6 once again on the road versus Milwaukee and Pittsburgh, the Reds opened up a Big 10-game homestand back at Riverfront Stadium / Synergy Field in mid-August. And on the 13th, after beating the Phillies 5-4 with a Sean Casey walk-off single in the bottom of the 9th, the Reds had tied the Houston Astros for first place. Here's Jack McKeon and Sean Casey.
Pick your heroes tonight because there's a bunch of them out there. They all played extremely well. Once again, we got decent pitching and another comeback win.
Yeah, right there I was trying to really get the ball in the air so I get a sac flyer. Just get that run in however I could.
And in the final game of the homestand, Sean Casey delivered again, a walk-off sac fly to beat the Expos. It was pennant fever in Cincinnati. It was back on the road for 7, and the Reds struggled. They were swept in Atlanta, and they split a 4-game series against the last-place Expos. September was just around the corner. The Reds were 76-55 on August the 31st, and in the thick of a playoff push. How would they fare? Well, we've got 2 more episodes to find out. Let's get to an email. This comes from Scott Williams. Hi, Cam. I figured I'd share with you my love of this team. I became a Reds fan in 1972, shortly after my 6-year-old self and family moved to Florida from Waynesville. My mom was a sports fan in our family, and she loved the Reds, so I have memories of that 1972 playoffs and World Series as my initial experience following the team. Johnny Bench became my favorite player, and from afar I got to experience the glory of the Big Red Machine. The key there is from afar. My Red fandom was largely limited to the sporting news each week, NBC's Saturday Game of the Week, Hal McCoy's The Reds Report, and if lucky enough, seeing the Reds play in the playoffs. Because I wasn't lucky enough to see or read about them every day as I aged into adulthood, the Reds did not capture my daily attention, even though I was still very much a fan. On my honeymoon in 1990, I remember excitedly opening the USA Today sports page because the Reds were winning 9 games in a row in 1990 en route to being wire-to-wire champions. I remember my terrible frustration in 1995 when baseball decided playoff games would only be shown regionally, and I was stuck, watching the Braves instead of getting to watch the Reds defeat the Dodgers. Then, of course, having to endure the 1995 Championship Series loss to the Braves. But there was this little thing called the Internet you might have heard of, and by 1999, Internet radio of Reds games was now possible. Mind you, as a youngster, I would try to catch the signal of WLW in the Orlando, Florida area, beginning around 9:45 in the evening. On good days, I could generally follow and listen to the end of Reds games, including hearing the end of Seaver's no-hitter, Browning's perfect game, and Bench's homer on his special night in 1983. I have an irrational dislike for Joe Nuxall because his voice was not nearly as discernible through the static as was Marty's. My listening lined up with innings that Marty called so I could actually understand what was going on. But then in 1999, I had one of the first versions of a smart TV that allowed for the internet. I can't remember what the device was called that you ran into your television, but it allowed for you to be online using your TV screen as a monitor. Well, for 6 glorious months, my television screen became the home for the Reds radio broadcast of that season. I listened to probably 100 games that year, for the first time getting to enjoy Marty and Joe the way millions of Reds fans had done for decades. I got to follow the day-to-day exploits of my favorite player, Barry Larkin, and my favorite team for the first time in my entire life, and it was exhilarating. I remember driving from Orlando to Daytona waiting for ESPN radio updates of the Reds winning another road game in the middle of their 10-game road winning streak in late June. From Greg Vaughn to Mike Cameron to Sean Casey to Pokey Reese to Steve Paris to Pete Harnish to Ron Vallone to Scott Williamson, they gave me so much joy. I celebrated all the home run hits in Philadelphia that night and suffered through the final series of the season in Milwaukee as we tried to clinch. And of course, the tough loss against the Mets is a horrible memory to this day. Over the next decade, with the advent of MLB TV, I began being able to watch the Reds regularly. So the 2000 team is deeply special because that was the first highly successful Reds team I got to watch with my own eyes. But that said, nothing beats regaining my lifelong love of the Reds during 1999. I look forward to your podcast and thank you for the opportunity to share my memories. Scott, thank you so much for that email. And that reminds me of my experiences with following the Reds in my middle teen years. You see, my family and I, we moved to Greenwood, South Carolina in 1988. So right after the All-Star game, a week or two later, we moved. And the only way that we were able to keep up with the Reds was if they were on Sunday Night Baseball, ESPN, some highlights. And of course, my mother thankfully had the brilliant idea to subscribe to the Cincinnati Post, and it would get mailed to us, albeit a few days later. But we were able to keep up with the box scores and the storylines and read all the articles about our favorite team, the Cincinnati Reds. And of course, that was really magnificent in 1990, keeping up with that special team and being able to, of course, listen to Marty and Joe at night during, night games, especially West Coast. They really came in great because of the reception of WLW. So I can relate totally to that experience of having to follow your ball club from afar. And of course, nowadays, like you had mentioned, it's so much easier to do than it was back then. But again, an excellent email. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I love hearing from you guys and how you experienced that 99 club. Now, we've only got 2 more episodes to go before we wrap up this unbelievable season, the 1999 season. So I'm doing 8 episodes total, and here we are. We're getting into September, and now the playoff push begins. Let's see what happens. I cannot wait to finish this up with you. Once again, I'm Cam Miller. Thanks for listening.